Sorry, I had to leave and come back. Is everybody here already?
Let me see. Ms. Goldberg had mentioned that she might join late, and Mr. Ceballos is not participating in this meeting. So Arturo's here, Mr. Castillo. Yes, so Ms. Alexander's on the line. Yes, so I think we're good to start.
Okay, so then let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. September 8th at 2:35. And let's begin with the roll call, please.
Sure. Ms. Patricia Goldberg, she mentioned she will be joining late. I don't see her on the screen, so I'm assuming she's not on yet. Mr. Arturo Garcia? I see his on. It's just part of the microphone.
He raised his hand.
Yes. Mr. Jose Castillo?
Present.
Mr. Kirby Snyderman? Kirby's there. Mr. Henry Sauvignon? Present. Mr. Jose Ceballos? He mentioned he will be absent. And Ms. Carol Alexander?
Present. I'm here.
We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. So then the next item on the agenda is the minutes, approval of the minutes of several of the past meetings. You sent us 3 attachments for 3 meetings, and I'm not sure what the dates were on those. Now, you mentioned on this March 17th, July 14th, 30th, and August 18th. Were those, but you sent 3 attachments?
Yes, so what happened, Mr. Chairman, is for the minutes for March 17, as you recall, we had some, after March 17, we didn't meet because of the pandemic.
Right.
So we started meeting until June 9 was the first meeting after the pandemic, basically. So on June 9, we were going to approve the minutes from March, which was the last meeting that we had, but they were tabled at that meeting. So we did not approve, the board didn't approve them, I'm sorry. So then we had the July 14 meeting. We were able to approve the minutes from June 9, but forgot that the March 17 had been tabled. So that's why we're bringing them back, because they didn't get approved July 14. So as of right now, we have the March 17. Then on July 30th, it was the workshop. It was tabled to approve the minutes from the last meeting, July 14. So now we have 2 minutes that were pending to approve. Then we have the meeting from July 30th, which we were supposed to, which we're going to approve, hopefully today. And then the ones for August 18 were supposed to be ready. That's why they were in the agenda, but they weren't ready as of right now.
Okay.
So those we're going to move to the following meeting. So hopefully get reviewed and approved till the following meeting on
Perfect.
August.
So then the 3 attachments that you included in the email you sent were for March 17th, July 14th, and July 30th.
Yes.
And so I hope everybody, all the board members have had a chance to review those attachments. I did earlier this afternoon. And so is there a motion that we approve the minutes as presented?
Do we have, I'm sorry, I didn't catch, do we have a quorum already, or
Yes, we do.
We have a quorum.
a motion to approve the minutes? All
It's been
3?
moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved in second. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. In particular, I appreciate the minutes that you all put together for the workshop. I thought they were pretty thorough. I certainly encourage us, if Able City hasn't seen the minutes of the meetings, I encourage Able City to review them now that they've been approved, because they have some very specific comments and instructions that I think will be useful to the development of the plan. That said, let's make sure that Able City is able to get a copy of them if they haven't seen them already.
I just received them during the meeting, so I'll review them.
Very good. Okay, next section, citizen comment. Citizens are required to fill out an online witness card no later than 2:45 p.m. and can be found at the city's website. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. No more than 3 persons are allowed to speak on any particular issue. Speakers may not pass the minutes to another speaker. Comments should be relevant to the city business at hand, and no derogatory remarks will be permitted. Has anybody signed up to speak?
Not at this moment. They do have up to 2:45 to submit any comments, but at this moment, there's no citizen comments. I'll let you know if something else comes up before the meeting ends.
Very good. Section 5, the discussion with possible action regarding the workshop presentation by Able City, board member comments regarding the information presented, and any other matters incident thereto. So I'd like to turn the presentation over to Able City, who is going to show us the result of the workshop and their synthesis of our discussion and everything, and our comments to the workshop. Not the results of the workshop itself, but our comments the following meeting to the workshop. And I will say that Able City, for the record, Able City called a committee meeting, non-quorum committee meeting, just to review and discuss some of the ideas they presented on hand, in case there were some comments to make sure they were moving in the right direction. Okay, Able City, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. So I also want you all to know that both my partners, Frank Gratnowski and Mario Pena, are on line with us, and appreciate them joining. So what we're going to present today is it's really the synthesis plan, and this is the second iteration, post the comments of the last meeting on the synthesis plan from the workshop. There's potential improvements and programs for the zones that are being shown. Go to the next slide, please. This is the synthesis plan showing all the different comments put together based on zones, nodes, monument signage, wayfinding signage, and, you know, just showing the entrance to the mall, tying it back to the original part of the TERS plan that asked for a connection to the mall as a primary intent for the TERS. What is shown in dashed line is a zone. It's an EDA grant that was discussed at the last meeting as a way to include the potential improvements that can happen on Salinas Street, which is a very important pedestrian corridor. Of course, Iturbide Street was another corridor that was important to everybody involved in the last meeting. And then everything that's in fuchsia is essentially the distillation of what everybody thought needed to be the impact zone, the primary area of impact and intervention with either with hard dollars and potentially dollars that augment the project through either a grant or leverage dollars. Next slide, please. So zone number 1 is showing the pink area, and I've left all the note on all of the slides. You're going to see all the dots so that you can coordinate yourself and how everything is connected. Wherever we start, however we distill this project as the first project, it has to connect finally to what is planned for the conclusion of the impact zone of the TERS, of how the whole thing is going to work together through connectivity, walkability, and of course from an economic point of view. So I did a little dashed line just as a reference point as to if we were just to think about the hard dollars, and just do a project. I believe that the area marked in yellow, which goes from Iturbide all around San Agustin to the intersection at Zaragoza and Convent, is probably what we can do for hard dollars if it's basically the redevelopment of the surface treatments. In other words, the paving, the sidewalks, getting everything coordinated correctly, some lighting. If there were a project to go out, I believe more than likely that would be what it could do. If they're leveraged, they can go a little further. And part of what we're going to do in next steps is talk about how okay, so here's hard dollars, here's leverage dollars, and here's the phasing that we suggest work to move forward in through either grants or leverage dollars. Matching funds, however we do it. Anyways, in Zone 1, we have some lighting at the entrance of the mall that would mark the entrance of the mall. You know, there's very narrow streets there, but between Salinas and Flores Street, there would be a treescape plan that would take as a reference point those trees that already exist there on the street. We suggest some plaza lighting, maybe in reference to just as you know, gaslight lamps are very, there's a lot of districts in the United States that use this to mark like their oldest area. They're very popular areas, so a good place to do it would be at just within the plaza of San Agustin Plaza. We have to decide on a street paver. The best street paver in terms of conditions and longevity that exist already are the pavers that are the concrete pavers. But that would mean that we would be replacing everything around the San Agustin area with those types of pavers. I think in order for this connectivity to exist, it's important to keep those pavers consistent throughout this. The scale of this downtown is too small to have so many different types of paving patterns. The concrete on the sidewalks is perfectly okay. It's very consistent with what we began with to what the city had done since, I guess, the 40s forward, which was replace all the banquetas with concrete. They look really good. They're fine. They're not expensive to put in. It's also possible for our, to have a relationship with the city that perhaps does some of the improvements in-house, and they are capable of doing concrete sidewalks very well. So we could pay for in-house construction rather than go to a general contract on maybe some of this. The pavers and all of that would be done separately, going out to contract more than likely. And then there's, of course, just getting the crosswalks and everything to work in the different parts of these. There's this. What's going to need to happen is an inventory of this area of the street, of what's existing, what we need to do. And there's going to be, okay, here we need a concrete sidewalk. here we need to add some trees, here we need to change the pavers. It's not like the whole thing is in need of all of these things. So we have to go in there and methodically look at each of these streets and see what we need to keep, what we need to replace, what we need to add. Next slide. Zone number 2 is basically the entertainment district spine that everybody felt strongly about. And there's a lot of existing improvements that can be used. Some of them have to be repaired. So again, that inventory is important, but essentially it's a lighting project and a signage project, and in some areas it's an additional sidewalk so that you can have that connectivity. There's some very narrow sidewalks, especially between San Agustin and Santa Ursula. And we have different kinds of lighting showing here. It all depends on this kind of lighting really requires an entity that is constantly making sure that they're repaired and maintained. It also allows, if there were an entity and it just wasn't, in other words, like if you connect between building and building, which is what is shown in 2 of these slides on the left, you don't have to put poles in the street and put additional poles in the street, but that requires a lot of interaction between the property owners and the improvements being made. So if we were to add poles in the street, the poles could be added in the right of way. That you wouldn't have to deal with private property and how those things connect on the buildings, but you still would need to figure out a maintenance and repair program. These lights tend to, sag, the cable sags, the light goes out, all those things, they have to be kept up rigorously. The other thing that's possible here, instead of doing what in the original part of the improvements on Iturbide Street, there were areas that were added to the sidewalk by taking over portions of the parking. And in those areas, trees were added and canopies. Today, I think it's possible in these 2 areas and even in other areas, in other places strategically done in this corridor, you can do a parklets program. We actually do have a parklets draft ordinance that was put together a few years ago. It didn't move forward, but we have one. In this particular case, it would be the owner of the building would be allowed to, by application, put a parklet and use it as part of an extension of their storefront. This is actually something that we're also discussing with San Antonio on Houston Street. And it's a way of allowing the owner to expand, and also it's great because they have to maintain it. Of course, it's maintained with a list of standards and guidelines and of what you can put there and what it looks like. And, the application would be by fee. And I think it's helpful to the business owner, and it also helps to activate the street a lot. Add the lighting, add some, if you look at the bottom left-hand corner, there's one with shade, which is very beautiful. Would be a fantastic addition, of course, to downtown Laredo to have some of these parklets with shade. The other thing is to bring maybe a signage program into that, which is something else that was discussed on Either Be the Street. That's not an improvement, but it would be a grant program. Next slide, please. Zone 3 is Convent Avenue. It was really interesting because Convent Avenue was really not part of the discussion until later on. There was interest after the first workshop, like what happened to Convent Avenue, and it's very important. And everybody zeroed in on this intersection of Zaragoza and Convent, and a connection to the Bridge of the Americas Plaza, which is 1 block south, and the making sure those trees are in good shape, and lighting, and then of course having some arrival point for all these people who are crossing at Bridge number 1, the original historic crossing and the only pedestrian crossing on this in Laredo. And what Convent Street is always been it's kind of a problem because it's very hard to widen those sidewalks. There's a lot of clutter. The canopies in general are in terrible shape. There's no standard for the canopies. There's all sorts of things that need to happen to those storefronts, especially where the canopy is concerned, and maybe some of the signage that really are not something that can be done through programs and having some kind of grant funding through that. But in terms of improvements, one of the reasons I put this little center slide in there, which is a competition that was done by Los Angeles. They just recently finished the competition. This was the winning entry. They are replacing 200,000 street lamp posts, and they just didn't want to do it nilly-willy. So they had this competition, and they said the post had to be versatile, and this entrant that won, this entry that won, you can see the post is, there's a lower light, there's a middle section for banners or for wreaths or whatever time. They have one with a clock on it. They have different ways of using this post. Go back to Convent Street, and we have this light post, existing light post, has the potential of there's 2 per block. They alternate from one side to the other, and they're tall enough. They are a 50s or 60s pole. They're actually quite nice. The top is always, that's the newest iteration of the post, the light that comes out, projects out, that can be changed. But a look to see of how to activate those posts so that they actually will, at night, have a light on a banner, to acclimate that post so that it can be used in different ways, just like they're doing it in LA. Because, the thing is that there's always a problem between, on these posts, the post, this lights the street, but what happens at the sidewalk level, you're basically hampered by the fact that you have a canopy, and is the store open? It's usually very dark, or the canopy doesn't have a light that's working. All those things come into play on these sidewalks. So the problem is there's not enough of these. I wish there were more, but we can use what we have, and maybe as time goes on, elaborate on this idea further. The elevation of the building fronts in the right below the light posts That is a program that was done by a city. They did a grant program for signage and canopies and lighting on the facades. And this is a result of what they did. I'm not suggesting that that's the kind of signage that you want there, but the program produced what you see. I think it was very successful. I just want to tell you a little bit about this upper slide where there's the yellow box. This arrival point is very important in terms of the city, the state, the country. This is where the arrival point of where the bridge number 1 comes in, and all these pedestrians come from Mexico. There's no arrival. There's really, if you look at the corner, which is up on the left-hand side, the corner of Convent and Zaragoza, northeast corner, there's a shoe source company, or I don't know if that's the same one that's there, but it used to be Payless. But this is not a historic building. It's owned by an estate. It's possible that maybe some discussions could be made with the estate to help the city acquire this piece of property, to make this arrival point, acquire the importance that needs to have. So much could be done if this building were taken out, and perhaps it'd be an open space. Perhaps it's a place where people can come in and sit down and have a drink. It's a place of respite, arrival, understanding where you are. There's really no way to put another thing on the sidewalk here, to put something else. So that's kind of, keep that in the back of your mind and yes.
Just a thought, something to consider. If any project like this where we're looking at purchasing and removing something off the tax rolls, maybe there's a way to balance that by doing something commercial, a public-private, something joint there where it could be leased out to a business, where, in other words, it doesn't have to be retained in the city. Where we get an easement maybe for like part of it, where it becomes a public space, but we can still be able to purchase the site and sell it back. So something where we're not, because I think that's going to be, if we're suggesting taking things off the tax rolls, that's going to be tough, and right in the climate right now, just in other conversations we've had with the city.
Having a plan, and I'm not suggesting that perhaps some kind of public-private partnership, however we can, but I think it's a space that we can, if we really want to do something here, it's not about putting another, monument sign or something there at that corner. It's not going to help. So what will help is a nice raised crosswalk, with pavers and something very nice at that intersection. But in terms of having a real arrival point with something that says welcome, I don't think it's possible to do at that corner. So can we go to the next one? Okay, so this is all those little dots that you saw. There's nodes of connectivity, which are really intersections, important intersections. You don't, just by doing the intersections along a street, either painted or with pavers, depending on how you want to differentiate certain places, will do a lot to create connectivity. It's a really good beginning. So we have several of these green little dots. We can, add more on Iturbide. We have them all along Hidalgo, the north-south connection. You'll walk through them. Like on Convent, there would be different places where you would connect east and west by seeing the paving change on the intersection. So we also have blue dots that represent the big monument signs that have that are telling you, hey, this is an important district, an important place, not district, an important entry to something that is an important path for a pedestrian to walk on. The idea, of course, is on Hidalgo Street, which is the first blue dot. I think that legend covered one of our dots. Sorry to say, but let me just tell you. So the blue dots are the bigger monument signs. The maroon, purplish dots are more wayfinding signage for vehicles. I looked a lot I took a little virtual tour of different towns in Spain and saw what they did on their streets for street signs. That's, of course, our city was developed on a Spanish grid system. So the historic district street signs it would be an interesting if in this area alone the street signs were on the buildings like they do it in Spain and in Europe, and I'm sure in Laredo when the streets were first laid out, I'm sure we can find a photograph where the street names were on the buildings. The use of the street signs being on poles in the center of street or at the corner of streets came later. In Europe, in Spain, the pedestrian wayfinding. Pedestrian is different from vehicles, automobiles, in that you're giving directions to zones, to different parts. Whereas in a pedestrian sign, you're telling them, hey, you go this way. This is where you go this way to the church, this way to this plaza, this way to It Street, to Zaragoza Street. And they're very simple and they suffice in their simplicity. If we don't want to go and do the signs on the buildings or see if we can get buy-in for that, we can stick with a signage on the light posts or on the corners of streets, but we should change those to the historic sign color, which is like a rusted brown color. And so you see painted crosswalks here, you see a paver intersection, you see the different kinds of monument signs. What came from the previous meetings was an interest to do the Zaragoza Street entry from Santa Ursula to essentially half of the project is there. The other half that was for Via Antigua was going to be a parking lot that hadn't been done, but there was a monument on the other side, kind of a gateway sign to Zaragoza Street there. Then there's the Iturbide one. There's a publicly owned piece of property on the south side, which is a parking lot that's owned by the city. It would be a great location for a tall, more kinetic lit sign for the entertainment corridor. And then the one on Hidalgo Street would be, that street picks up a lot of traffic from South Laredo. It connects, the Hidalgo Street connects through Azteca all the way to South Laredo. Not on Hidalgo, you have to turn, but you end up at that intersection, and that would be a great location for a monument sign as well. What it looks like, is it a gateway? Is it essentially just a lit vertical sign? None of that is being explored at this point. It's really typology more than anything else. What you don't see is a vehicle, automobile type sign over at at the end of the exit point of IH-35. And right there at that corner, there needs to be wayfinding signage for vehicles. I also looked at Europe for that. They're very simple. These are lit. I think that's a good idea for this area. It catches the eye and it just directs people to where they're going to go. The other monument sign would be marking either close to the overpass to LC, or maybe it's at Santa Maria. I don't know. These are the kinds of discussions that I think that we need to have with LC. In talking to Dr. Solis, he is very interested in connecting the college to downtown. As you know, it has its constraints, railroad, overpass. The connections have been severed over the years in different ways. So a project that connects the college, which is an incredible asset for the inner city and for downtown specifically, is a good way to start doing that, is through a monument sign, and maybe other collegiate type things happening on Washington Street, banner program of some sort, that kind of thing, with some posts for banners. That would be a way of connecting. I believe that's it. The next slide is next steps, and then we can go back and discuss it, whatever. We'll go back to the slides you want to discuss, but we believe the next step should be a committee meeting with Marsh Darcy on program financing, meet with city manager's office to review work and action plans thus far, prepare a meeting with Laredo College and County of Webb to join the TERS, inventory of existing street improvements for each zone and provide locations for new improvements, begin to draft standards, prepare an opinion of probable costs of repair or maintenance per zone, prepare a draft of potential grant programs, and meet with stakeholders in each zone. There's no, it's like, it's not first do this, second do that. It's basically, this is what we feel are the next step in a totality of, before we go, trying to finish a project and saying this is it.
Very good. I'd like to open the floor for comments from the
You want to go
members.
back to the original? I will take it from the first slide if people have any comments on the second slide.
And actually, before we open the floor for comments from the board, for the record, I'd like to note that Patty Goldberg has joined the meeting. Okay, board members.
Many of you are on mute.
Did I miss a slide, or maybe we're not there yet, where you had like a priority list of projects with costs?
No,
Did I miss that?
we're not there yet. I don't think we're. What I did is I said, okay, here is hard cost 700,000. This is what I think it is, and it's really, surface up, no bearing of lines, none of that stuff. And that was in the next slide, Leslie. From before we have to go and do an inventory of the streets and see, okay, here we're going to add this, there we're going to. No, Leslie, go to the third slide, please.
So maybe I misunderstood a little bit. My understanding was of the exercise to look at the zones was to find an area of focus where we're going to focus. This still looks like a lot of area for the amount of money that we have, and once we had an area where we're going to focus, then we had some projects we could consider with costs. I don't know. I mean, I guess we get input from others, Henry, but this still seems very. If we want to do projects in all these zones, it feels like it would dilute the amount of money that we have to be impactful. I mean, any project we consider, any of these things, street pavers, signage. One of the questions I'd always ask is, how would this get businesses to either, how would this lead to reinvestment? And how do we get reinvestment? Because businesses want to locate here. I was just talking to, this weekend, I was talking to a business that's leasing some property in one of these zones downtown. And I was just having a conversation about why the owner of the business decided to locate in the downtown, and has it been what he thought it would be, and how are things going, and where are other places in Laredo he's considering. And it's been okay. The advantage for him is his very low lease, but as low as the lease is, there's just such a small amount of activity for him. And this was pre and also obviously during COVID, but it's pre-COVID as well. And this is not, it's not a main, it was once, but it's not a commercial center anymore. We made land use decisions a long time ago that led to that leaving the core of the city. And so if we want to track that back with any one of these, okay, if we're going to do trees, we're going to do plaza lighting, we're going to do street pavers here at this location, what's that going to do? And if we got to some project, and I know we don't have the kind of money where maybe we could be hugely directly impacted, but let's say we bought a building and like that shoeless pay store place, and we turned it into parking. And I know that's not the most beautiful thing in the world that we want to see, but if you said, how would that impact the surrounding businesses? You could imagine parking being an issue with a lot of these businesses, that would directly impact the businesses nearby, because now they'd have free public parking accessible right next to their business. So that would have a direct impact on those property owners able to lease their spaces, because now their property is more marketable because it has parking right nearby. Now, I'm not suggesting that's the answer. I'm just suggesting that's a real clear nexus between what we're trying to do, what the purpose of this board is. And it's sometimes I think we can all wanting to see our downtown look more beautiful. We can think that is our goal, but the goal of the TERS, how do we bring reinvestment back to downtown? How do we get this commercial center to get more activity?
Well, Kirby, how do you do that without improvements? I think the thing about what you're talking about is really the purview of a PID or an MMD or a business improvement district, or how how,
Well, it could be, it's not just the management of it, it's, it is the investments, and even small ones can have. So I would say, if you took a street that didn't have any trees on it, and you put trees, you created a tree canopy, or one that would vary in a few years, create a tree canopy and put in some places where people could sit, that does have an impact if it leads to people lingering and wanting to, locate. Now, that impact may not be as direct as something like parking. It'd be harder to make that case. But I think that's one of the challenges. I'll at least evaluate the improvements we're going to make in my decision will be, how does this make a business more successful downtown? How does this attract more customers for that business? How does it make the landlord able to lease that property, make it more marketable so they can lease it? How does it lead to more reinvestment in those buildings because now it's more marketable, they can make more money, so they're going to put a little more into it. And then that has an effect on the properties nearby, and that's the kind of the impetus we're looking for. If we don't have to.
So, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
When I get a chance, this is Carol. When I get a chance, I'd like to chime in.
Go ahead, Carol.
Oh, so I wish I had written these numbers down or I had them handy, but like Kirby says about this becoming an economic center or returning to an economic center, so many people who maybe live in the north and never venture downtown except for any particular reason, right? It seems like the last time we heard what the numbers are, downtown has an enormous number of people walking around and happening. What it doesn't have is available services. So that if we could make it start to look like an area that matters, and also that stopped ignoring the tremendous number of people that are actually walking around down there, that would be beneficial. And I remember when I was walking, the last time I walked across the river, and I was returning, which has been just right before pandemic. I was astounded at the number of people and what the people will accept. No bathroom, no services, nothing. Just stand in this line. Nobody's going to tell you anything. No one's going to respect that you may have a need, right? And they just, all those people in that line have money in their pocket, and I think we need to capitalize. Part of our mission might be to make the area look like it's alive again, like it matters. And I think, Viviana, when you talked about the Wayfair signs that are lit up, just those little things make the area look like it's not just a dead, forgotten ghost town. And I think all of that would help it become more economically viable.
Could you move it to the back to the other slide where it shows the timeline?
timeline?
Carol, I agree with you, and what I was saying was some of these can be more impactful than others, and we have to make hard decisions because we have limited funds. To me, the way that I would make the decision for me, not for everybody, just for me, is which one is most impactful. And if we're looking at just things that are going to be looking at the aesthetics, which ones have more direct impact on bringing investment, affecting businesses, allowing businesses to be more successful downtown, so that when somebody's thinking about, should I lease in the Heights or should I lease here for my barbershop or for my little restaurant, they want to come in. They want to come downtown. And
Yeah, I'm always worried about putting lipstick on a pig, that we really don't want to do that, just because we think we're just going to have, $100 and we're just going to spend like that instead of planning big with something that could really make a difference. And Kirby, really, I liked your example when you talked about, of course, at first it felt like a slap in the face when you said, yeah, we're going to tear down that building and turn it into a parking lot right there. But I see what you're saying, that really would make a difference. There'd be a place to park, and that's an issue. But maybe that's not our mission in this organization. Right?
Carol, actually, you hit it right. You hit the nail exactly what I was trying to say. You get it an issue where there's a problem. So let's say we do wayfinding, but that was never an issue. Everybody that's walking through downtown, like you said, they already know where they're going. The problem is they're not stopping. So we put up pretty wayfinding that shows everybody how to get around, but that's not really an issue. It's not like people don't know what's not down there. I'm not saying that is or is an issue. I'm saying if it wasn't, and we spent the money on wayfinding, then were we really impactful? But if there are a bunch of people going around don't know where things are, I don't think that's the case here, but if it were, then wayfinding actually would affect activity, drive it in areas where people just didn't know there was something down this street. And all of a sudden now you got more traffic down the street that you didn't have before. So that's what I was suggesting. I'm not saying any one of these are bad. I'm just saying that's my ability that's what I'm using to evaluate. And then also that I was anticipating we were going to have an area of focus, and then we were going to talk about projects in that area of focus. This still looks like a big area, and we're still talking about a lot of options. So that's just my comment.
And Kirby, do you have an area of focus that you think is because there's so much need. There's so much need that
I know.
There's finally an organized group, and our councilman thinks this is the group that's going to make the difference, right? But like Henry says, it has to be layers of groups. It's layers of decisions and whatnot that are going to make the difference. But we seem to be, we're the only ones that have any money, even if it's just a little bit of money, right?
Yeah, it is a very little bit.
Could we go back?
What do you think? Go ahead.
Could we go back to that slide that's got the items that are pending?
Next steps.
Next steps, yeah.
Last slide.
My focus was Iturbide, and I know things are already happening there, but that's why it's my focus. That was my input. It is start there. Things are happening there. Let's build on what's happening, and it spreads out from there.
I would, and next steps, Kirby. I would like to point out that the meeting with the college is important, but meeting with them right now at this point is not going to come into is not going to provide us any benefit at this point in moment with what we want to kind of shoot for right now with the funding that we got. So I would put that as a let's get that out of the way. I mean, a to do, but don't put it as part of the next steps right now in trying to get moving these projects. So I move that we prepare a meeting with Laredo College and the county till after we select the projects, because I mean, why do we want to waste time on that right now? I mean, we want to get the project moving.
Well, Arturo, I'll say for that one, I think that's really not connected to this. We do need to have that conversation, and we need to have it sooner than later. The reality is they probably will decline like they have already, but I'm not sure somebody's had those conversations with them. So let's have it. And
I'm not saying not have it, but why waste time on it when the priority is to get the project moving? Once we get the project moving, let's have that conversation with them.
Well, because we only make up 30% of the increment.
Well, realistically, Kirby, if they were to say yes, when would that money come into play?
I mean,
2-3 years from now?
No, maybe it's next.
So we got plenty of time.
Well, we got to get
talking to the county and to the college. Not that they're not important, but the thing to it is, I mean, the whole thing is getting this project moving, and we're adding about 8 months of time here.
No,
well, I agree. We're adding a bunch of things in here maybe we don't need to focus on yet, but that one is important, and we don't need the whole committee. We just need, able cities and one or two of us to try and make the case to them, and I'll volunteer in that effort. And Henry, if you want to come with me, and then me and you and Viviana and Mario went and just had a conversation. That'd be great. A short little presentation. We don't need everybody. We just need to try to make a case to them, get the ball rolling on that. And that's separate from this.
And I'm not opposed to that, Kirby. The thing to it is that I don't want to put it as part of our timeline to get our projects done.
I agree.
Because,
I agree.
Kirby,
It's not
actually,
it's not in a critical path,
No.
but it's an item that we, at least on our end, I think we need to start tracking.
Correct.
We're supposed to be tracking everything, right? So I think we can track it and.
Yeah, and this is part of financing. This is, we're leaving out entities that can help finance these projects.
right.
But that's going to be until 2022.
No.
Yeah, I'll point out something though. The county, remember the TERS originally did its numbers with the college in mind. If you recall, I believe the college addition to the TERS in terms of financing was put in there, and even before the TERS board was formed, there was some discussion that was going on. It just never materialized. So let me go to something that Arturo said, and I think it also goes to what Kirby said. To be honest, both of you said something that's very similar. Kirby, you expected to see something a little more refined in terms of narrowness, narrowing it down to what the focus would be, and I think there's a truth to that, except that Able City took everything we said as our priorities. Which I encouraged everybody to narrow it down to 3 priorities. Unfortunately, it was not the same 3 priorities, and that's why you have the zone that you have. I do agree with you. I think it needs to be narrowed a bit more because the money is limited. As much as we want, the city's not asking for another super plan, downtown economic development plan. They're asking the TERS, here's the money you have. What can you do with this to have the greatest effect? And it goes to what Arturo's saying. At this point, we have what we have. And we're going to ask the city to leverage some of that, maybe through bond money, if that's going to be possible. Although, Kirby, you yourself have mentioned a couple of times that you don't think that may be possible. But anyway, we need to present this to the board, to the city as a whole. I think the next iteration is to narrow this. We can't. If you saw the second slide that Able City showed us, the second slide showed a small little triangle area in yellow of what we can do in terms of surface stuff if we used the monies we have today. That's a bite size of the entire project. I think that what we as a board need to do is we need to see what Able City has narrowed it down, has taken our comments and shown them to us and given us some ideas on what we could do with these. A large part of this I keep on seeing over and over are sidewalks. I see trees and I see lighting, and this is in the various iterations we have there. You're absolutely right. If this is not going to build a project, or it's not going to help someone be comfortable about moving to the downtown area, we can, with all, I'm going to comment on the paver issue, Able City. We can argue and put this size paver versus that size paver versus the triangle ones or whatever, and uniformity in pavers isn't going to cause someone to say, okay, the pavers are uniform, I'm going downtown. I'm not saying that any of the other things are going to do it more than the other, but I think, for example, lighting and trees does. We've talked about that as board members several times, where we're saying lighting, trees, and murals or neon signs in the downtown area will have the largest impact to bringing people into the downtown area.
Henry did a great job saying what I was saying it better.
So what the next step really is, and I know, and I'm sorry there's so many steps involved here, but this is what it is. We need to look at this, what Able City has shown us, and and I direct the comment also to Carol. Carol, we need to, we need to narrow this. Sure, everything Able City has shown us on this drawing is wonderful, but this is not an $800,000 project. Everything Able City has shown us is at minimum a $10 million to $12 million project, and that money just isn't there. So we have to decide what we're going to be recommending as a board to move forward and focus on. And Kirby has said it already himself. His feeling on this is that we have investment on Iturbide Street, and we need to add more investment on Iturbide Street. I've said it a couple of times that I believe, and again, the city might have changed its opinion on this subject now, but originally it needed to connect the outlets to the center, create a walkable area. I think walkable means trees and sidewalks, uniform sidewalks, leveled sidewalks and trees, lighting, and then that's where we need to start.
So, okay, you're saying what I heard was two things. Zaragoza Street, assuming between the entry of the mall and Flores only. And then Iturbide Street, different things, wherever things are necessary, put them in.
These are two of the comments. We also know, and again, this is why the plan is so large. We also know that Patty has mentioned Convent Street several times. We also know that Jose Ceballos has mentioned St. Augustine several times. We as a board need to be looking at this and narrowing the focus so that we're all in agreement of what we can do that makes the most impact to help businesses say, I'm going to lease a shop there to do X.
Henry,
well, let me just say I'm sorry, it doesn't change this. Go to the first slide. Oh, this is the first slide. Sorry. No, sorry. Go to the first slide, please. Second slide. What you've just said doesn't change this. What you're saying is concentrate between Salinas and Flores, or the entry of the mall to Flores and Iturbide. That's what I heard you say. It's not to say that all of this goes away. It's just say this is phase one.
I agree with you. What you just said is perfect, because this distills. Believe it or not, I believe this is an improvement over what we were talking about in dreaming about even a few months ago. It was much wider. The scope was much further, and you've done an excellent job of taking what we've said and distilling it into this. I like this very much. Now we need to go to the next step, and the next step is focus, focus, focus.
On phases.
And choose one.
Yeah, well said, Henry. I agree 100%. And I could be persuaded about putting that investment on the route from the outlet mall to the center, more towards the center of downtown, or towards Iturbide.
So,
Right, hold on just a second.
That was the original plan, yes.
No. What
Right.
Henry said, let's look at the entry to Flores, okay? Not all the way to Iturbide. We don't, that original amount is not gonna take you all the way over there.
Yeah, probably not. But, yeah.
So it's 2 blocks, 2.5 blocks, and then look to see the balance of that goes to Iturbide, somewhere. Iturbide.
Yeah, okay, so here's an idea, and I'm throwing this out. I really want comment from the board members, but, let's take the intersection of Convent and Zaragoza as the center of that Zaragoza project, and go a block to a block and a half down to create the connectivity there that joins the plaza and the hotel to the outlets, okay?
Okay.
And that's one.
So it's a T? It's a T.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. It's a straight line.
Zaragoza to the outlet mall entry. Zaragoza and Convent to the outlet mall entry.
So that's 2.5 blocks.
More or
I'm
less,
sorry.
yes.
Not Flores. Or yes, Flores.
No.
Yeah, to Flores.
Okay. So Flores is, can you draw that, please?
I'm trying to draw it now. I just can't find the right color here. Hold on.
All the way to Flores?
All right. Can you see what I've drawn? There.
Yeah. But it goes 1.5 blocks more, Mario.
All the way to here.
All the way to the orange dot.
I don't think I'm even drawing anymore, am I? There.
Yes.
Whoever's now somebody else is drawing, and that looks good.
Yeah.
Not me.
And the balance would go to Iturbide.
Wait a second. I will be right back.
Is there a connection down to the bridge? Do we want to go down here too?
No, there is a connection down, but what Henry, please, it's real important. This whole thing is great, but if we look at it from a phase point of view, what we can do for the dollars, Henry mentioned, and Kirby, I guess, Kirby said Iturbide first. Henry says a piece of Zaragoza Street and a piece of Iturbide Street. And that piece is 2.5 blocks from Flores to the entry of the mall.
Well,
for Zaragoza, and we haven't discussed Iturbide Street.
I think what's more important is to focus all of it in one place. We don't have to do both if we don't have enough to make a meaningful impact in one. I mean, I would rather see it all go to Zaragoza than to split it up between the two. Because look, I mean, 2.5 blocks, that's a lot for the amount of money we have.
Well, remember also, we're not bearing any of the utilities on any of this right now. I mean, at all, unless somebody wants to jump in and help us with this project. Those utilities are above ground, and they start on the midpoint of Flores, I believe. The midpoint of Zaragoza Street between Flores and Convent, and they go all the way down to, all the way. So, and they're pretty unsightly, but if you have a tree canopy, it'll help a lot.
I think that's a good metric to think about. I mean, I don't think there's any way we could do more than 3 blocks. So here's 2.5, that's pretty much, 2 to 3 blocks, that's pretty much it with what we've got to make a meaningful impact. Now, the only case I would make for Iturbide is if you put that, so let's just go with me and say, yeah, Kirby, maybe you're right. Maybe we only have enough money to really make a meaningful impact on 2 or 3 blocks. Okay, if that's true, then we say, okay, where can we make the most meaningful impact? The question I would say is, okay, well, one place would be where you have the most retail frontage and more of it's vacant. So ask yourself on Iturbide versus Zaragoza, where do you have more vacant retail spaces that could be occupied by a business or underutilized? So maybe something's there, but could be something better or more activity. The problem with Zaragoza is you've got the hotel, you got the plaza, you got the outlet mall, you got buildings that are already occupied. They're already, they've got activity, and yeah, maybe there's a few in there that don't. But Iturbide, there's a lot of underutilized and vacant spaces that could be really impacted by 2 to 3 blocks worth of investment. So I'm just trying to make my case. But whatever we do, I really think we should focus on 2 or 3 blocks. So if the group as a whole decides Zaragoza is our phase 1, then okay. But we don't have to try to spread it out. That's what I'm more against, is spreading too thin that no one really sees the impact we made. It doesn't really impact any decisions for there to be reinvestment.
I don't think that I think that we've already agreed as a board many months ago that the focus was never going to be on Iturbide. It was always going to be the walkability between San Agustin Cathedral, the hotel, down Zaragoza to the mall. Is that correct?
So Carol, I would say that's correct, but that was also at the time, recall that we were also, what's left the equation is the conference center. And remember, the idea behind a lot of this was connecting the conference center, hotel plaza to the outlets so that people could have a more friendly pedestrian kind of walk. The conference center is gone. I would only throw that comment out there.
I would, but the walkability of Zaragoza is critical, even with or without the conference center, because of the established anchors of La Posada and the cathedral. Yeah. And the walkability of that street is non-existent between Flores and the mall. And I know if we went back in our notes that Zaragoza and the walkability of it is critical, and it was key, and it was first, and also that on our walking tour we looked at Iturbide and we called it the street to model because it's already had some significant updating, and it really does look nice, and I think it really is the street to model. But there has been we have a very disconnected group of stakeholders in this community, in the downtown community, and the improvements along Iturbide could or may not be one of the reasons. And so to focus there again, I see a real problem.
Yeah, and I think again, that point is a point well taken and something we need to consider. Patty, do you have any comments?
Yes, I do. As a business owner who is struggling, and the idea is to attract businesses, and we're like trying to say, oh well, do we really want to stay down here? Okay, one of the last businesses left, one of the few last, we have 3 locations there, and it's several things. One is like, who are we trying to attract? Like yes, we have a huge amount of pedestrian traffic, huge, without any disposable income. So that's another thing. Like, they come, but they don't spend. They don't have the money to spend. They buy, little things, very, very, very low price point stuff, not enough to keep hardly any businesses alive. And they're not the ones that are going to be hanging out on its street either. So that's one factor. And then the other factor is that no matter how much advertising, no matter social media, newspaper, you name it, I have tried it. I cannot get people from Laredo to come downtown to shop. I don't care what. You can give stuff away and they still won't come. A huge factor, I think, is the parking. I agree with Kirby on almost everything. I feel like a lot of people just don't want to go through the hassle of driving around, and people are lazy. Yes, there's public parking downtown, but people are just kind of lazy. They don't want to walk 3 blocks. So if the idea is to attract businesses like salon owners or nail shops or just small businesses, parking is an issue. And then it's like, the other, I guess, level would be, okay, do we want to attract Laredoans who want to go downtown because there's events and, like the farmer's market or the, whatever events you would want, and have this beautiful area to host these things, and businesses in and around that area would benefit. Like, I think that the locations right next to the cathedral are great ones and huge ones. The one in front of our store is beautiful and empty. So I feel like I would want to make the mall as a fringe thing, but I feel like spending the money on Zaragoza, where La Posada is, where the cathedral is, where the historic district is. I think that, as a Laredo one, I would go down there to I feel like we need a real bang for our buck, or we're going to get murdered at the end of this. They're going to say, where'd they spend the money? What's this board for? And that's how I feel. I feel like we really need a bang for our money, or it's just going to not be especially if we're trying to promote other people to come on, like LCC and stuff, people like that. They're going to say, oh, they spent their money here. It's not going to show where we spent our money. And that's why I think Zaragoza is the place to do it, because it would be a really nice place to host things where people from North Laredo would be enticed to go downtown. And then hopefully businesses also, because I think, are we trying to just attract bars and restaurants and that's it? Well, if that's the idea, then it should just only be Iturbide. But I don't think that's I also feel like Iturbide has already gotten a nice facelift. And I think just doing cool lighting on that street would make a huge difference, and we'd call it done. But the other ones, not so much. So that's my feelings.
Patty, that was really great. Can you go to this next slide, please, Leslie? Just so that I can show. And I don't have control of this, but okay. So, if we were to, can I get control? Nobody can see my little cursor, right?
I can see it.
You can see it?
No, I think you're seeing Leslie's cursor.
Oh, okay. Can I get control so I can draw, please?
Ms. Viviana, this is Nadia. Everybody has the same access, so I don't know if it's on y'all's side on the PowerPoint, but regarding WebEx, everybody has access the same.
Mr. Chairman, this is Arturo. One quick question before Viviana gets started. So where are we going with this? I mean, I don't want to spend another hour. What are we trying to get out of this today?
I think what we're looking at, we're viewing the results of our comments that we came in here and looking to narrow this. This is for the purpose. I mean, the idea here being that what we see here is a nice plan that's distilled what we've made comments on, but it still needs to be, we need to distill it a bit more.
I really liked Patty's kind of interpretation of things. So kind of like supporting what Carol was mentioning, that the key priority area was that walkable area between Zaragoza. That's always been the target market or the target area to initiate. And then, anything else after that, we had talked so that way we could have some spillover on some other areas of the downtown, so that way we wouldn't just be focused. So I kind of support what Patty mentioned. So
okay, Mario Peña, you want to make a comment?
Well, I don't know, but I think I don't want to step over what Viviana was going to talk about.
Look, before you start, let me just, because I can't find it, but I do think if forget the dashed part right now, that really is just talking about a future grant. Like if we were to do a grant, that's where we would do it. But if you can see the L and around the plaza, okay? And then you can see as the yellow area that I highlighted. And then there's another leg north all the way to Hidalgo Street, which, by the way, is going, there's a lot of money that's going to be going into a project there, the Plaza Theater. has pretty much everything around the center is in pretty good shape in terms of paving and sidewalks and things like that. Then there's the extra little leg over to the entrance to the mall. Maybe what we need to do is have a meeting with management and say, for this amount of money, we can do this, but we really would like to do these two legs. Is this something that you would like to participate in? Otherwise, we're going to go here. And that here is something that we need to zero in on, but for the 700,000 or 800,000, but we need to, I think, give an opportunity to the city manager, the council person, to look at what we're trying to do and see if there's some help there. If not, we'll just go and zero in where we say we're going to do it.
No, so Viviana, your point is well taken, I want to echo what Patty and Carol and now Arturo has said. So okay, so if we focus and keeping this particular map up, where you have the orange dot, which is the entrance to the mall, and that point all the way to maybe where San Agustin Plaza is what we focus the existing money that we have. And we'll say, this is what we can work on. However, I agree with you, Viviana. We have an important project that may be coming up related to the Plaza Theater. And if we ask the city to partner with us and take that leg up, that L that turns upward, that goes all the way to the Hidalgo, it won't hit where the plaza is, but it hits the street where the plaza is. It creates this walkable L. The first leg of the L is the walkable L between the St. Augustine Plaza and the mall, so it joins the hotel, the city historic center to the outlets. The second leg joins the Center for the Arts and the Plaza Theater down to San Agustin Plaza. And maybe that's the talk, and I need comments from city members of the board. And that's the leg maybe we ask the city to participate with, where we start doing trees, doing the signage or the murals that we talked about, Arturo, and the lighting. And if you focus on that L in that area there, that's a focus. And I think that we've done a good job of narrowing it. What are your thoughts with the city? I think that we need to go to the city with more than just, here's where the money will take us. We need to say, and if you contribute an equal amount of money to this project, we can do this part too.
We could certainly ask, but we're still in that climate of uncertainty. We're looking at $25 million of deficit, that it's not going to be easy. We certainly ask, we certainly have that conversation, but it's going to have to come from somewhere, and we're going to have to make the case this is more important than something else. I mean, we do that anytime we ask for money, but this time especially, because we're going to be making cuts, most likely. And so
I'm sorry, I just needed to understand one thing about what you said, Henry. You're saying if they say there is no money, where is it that you suggested that we do it? Is it the L?
The mall, the orange, the mall entrance, all the way to the plaza. Stop. That's it. There's no more money.
You mean to the?
It's the part of
Flores.
The part at the bottom. It's the part the east-west lower leg, southmost.
Yes, but okay, I get that, but so we're looking at okay.
I mean,
Viviana.
Why San Augustine instead of Flores?
I was going to say the same thing. So, and I think that some of this is if we agree on a couple of priorities, and then Able City can take it back and just make some recommendations based on we kind of have to loosely assign what A streets and B streets are. B streets are typically, they've got more access driveways, parking lots, that kind of stuff. And San Agustin seems to be more of a B street. than an A street. Flores might be more of an A street. We can kind of score them based on like how likely they are to be more pedestrian friendly and how likely they are to activate storefronts and businesses. And then from there, you can decide from one or the other. I don't know that we have that data at this moment, but we can grab for you and present it, and you can prioritize based on that.
I'd like to know, is it possible when y'all start putting numbers together to do like so much for east of Convent, so much for west of Convent, and then so much for north of Zaragoza, east of Zaragoza, on Zaragoza, east of Convent so much, west of Convent so much, and so much for 2 blocks up on San Agustin. Is that doable?
Good. We need to get down to the...
Yeah, we need to do an inventory. We need to go in there and really survey it. Not survey it with, yeah, okay, you know what I mean.
Yes.
Right.
I'm talking about a topographical survey. Right.
Right. So in Able City, I'll note one thing. I think I want to reemphasize something that both Kirby and Arturo have mentioned a couple of times. And I think Patty even mentioned it as well. These need to be things that we know, we say that you yourselves know. I mean, you know this topic. This is going to be more likely to influence business development as opposed to what we would like to see there. You know, lighting always does tons to help an area. If the lighting is right, the area develops. If the lighting is wrong, it looks like a dead zone. I think trees do the same thing in terms of they serving as canopies and also respite areas, that kind of sidewalks. We've seen what sidewalks have done to Iturbide. Iturbide has seen some of its activity due to the walkability of Iturbide. Not all of it is perfect, but sidewalks had a lot to do with it. And so sidewalks, lighting, and trees are what we're going to have to focus on.
Well, I think the beauty of this board is we all have little different ideas. We come together on good consensus, and I think the focusing on Zaragoza is good. Focusing is the key word there, and yes, Able Cities did a fantastic job compiling all of our input. And this, if we are lucky to see an upswing in property taxes and we see greater increments in the future, we have something to guide us. But focusing on a phase one and getting down to some details. The only caution, I would just say a caution is, I like the idea of having the conversation with the city. We can certainly ask. But one of the beauties of the TERS board is it's not political. And we might be introducing some of that if we're, talking to council members about this and trying to get people to weigh in on what they want. That's all I would say is the nice thing is we can set that aside and just evaluate what you just said, Henry. What's going to make the most meaningful impact for the businesses there and for the businesses that could be there?
Right.
I just want to say one last thing, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I was expecting, to be honest with you, my whole expectation was a little bit different. The workshop process was excellent at the last meeting and that information, but I was expecting something a whole lot of different with this meeting. I thought we were going to get 3 refined projects that we could possibly look at and then move forward on recommending one or several. So that's where I thought. So that's my end of the conversation here.
I appreciate your comment. No, and it's noted. So the next step is going to be going in the direction that Arturo has just mentioned, Able City.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've
Lighting,
we
trees,
have a consensus.
right? Lighting, trees, sidewalks for these areas that we've just kind of come to consensus on. Do we need a motion to that effect?
I welcome a motion.
Well, I make the motion that we direct Able Cities to prepare a to prepare a report showing costs for sidewalks, trees, and lighting from the entry of the outlet mall down Zaragoza to San Agustin, and then a second showing trees, lighting, and sidewalk from Zaragoza and San Agustin to San Agustin and what is that street? Or the second leg of that L? Hidalgo.
I would add, Kirby, can I ask you to include in your motion, Arturo already made a motion a couple of meetings ago that talked about art, mural, signage, that I think that's a key part of the project. We voted on that actually, and it's already been, we just need to remind ourselves that we voted that would be part of the presentation.
Okay, so lighting, trees, sidewalks, and some amount of funding for bringing artists to paint murals at locations along the street.
Very good.
On those.
It's been moved. Is there a second to the motion?
No signage.
No signage.
It's been seconded.
Second.
Thank you. We're open for discussion. Is there any discussion?
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
Can you repeat the motion? I'm sorry.
So it's been moved that we focus on Zaragoza Street from the outlet, the mall, start where the outlets are, all the way to San Agustin. And we're going to focus on sidewalks, lighting, trees, and some signs, some art, whether it be mural or neon or some light. But this is going to Arturo Garcia's motion a couple of meetings ago, and that would be priced out in maybe phases so that we know what we would get if we did 2 blocks, 3 blocks, 4 blocks. Then we would do the second leg of the project, which would run St. Augustine Street from Zaragoza up to Flores, focusing on the same points. But that would be a second leg of the project that we would invite the city to participate in, if appropriate and if they could.
So the motion is that we have a report that gives us cost estimates for those elements, and then we know what we could spend on, and then we have something we can ask the city to participate on for phase 2.
That's correct.
So I have, may I ask 2 questions, please?
Mm-hmm.
Or 1 comment, 1 question. I think we need to, depending on what we do between Flores and San Agustin on Zaragoza, and Zaragoza and Grant Street on San Agustin, we're going to have to consider the other 2 legs of the plaza, because whatever we do on those 2 sides needs to be considered on the other side of the plaza. So there's got to be some
Uniformity.
Around the plaza. You can't just change everything on our plaza and miss half of it.
Well, that was going to be my question about, I mean, we're going to focus on this and this and this and this, but what happened to the design guidelines? Is there not going to be, will those not be addressed so that when we're going forward, if we're going forward or if somebody else takes the wheel, they have those in place?
Again, we need to focus. The guidelines are important as they're being developed, and as the project is moving forward, the guidelines we use to develop the project. But to develop guidelines for something we're not going to do, I don't recommend, because if we're not, and I'm going to use this as an example only, but if we're not adding lamp poles to any of this project, let's not do guidelines for lamp poles. Let's just focus on guidelines or what we're doing in this area, not for something we're not doing. We're not creating a design guideline plan for future growth and future people to work on. We have monies to work on a project here and now.
Okay, I see what you're saying, that the guidelines, I mean, the whatever the project is, that'll be what is, right?
We need this, those will be the standards we set for those things that we improve. Yes, those are guidelines for what we improve, but let's not start coming up with guidelines for something we're not improving on at this point. I don't think we have the time nor the resources.
And so when you say that the signage was not going to be included, are you talking about potentially the sense of space or the entryway from the bridge, the pedestrian entry into the country?
Yes, well, we're focusing in on our sidewalks, trees,
And murals.
Yeah.
The murals could be signage as well. I mean, if they want to incorporate some, wayfinding within the murals, that would be great. But if you're talking about dedicated signs and you want them to look nice, I mean, that we're going to have to. I don't think we can do it all. And I think the alternative would be is once they put together this report, and let's say they surprise us all and they say, hey, you're going to have an extra $200,000. Well, then, sure, why not? We can come back, have this discussion, and say, let's do some wayfinding. But I think what we'll find is the opposite. Their report is going to say, to do what y'all want to do, it's going to be a couple $1 million. And then we have to say,
yeah.
And then
We
they
need
have
to
to-
do the inventory. We do need to do that.
and then once they say that, then we're going to have to say, you know what? We were saying sidewalk, trees, lighting, and murals. We're probably going to have to get down to just trees, lighting, and murals because we can't afford the sidewalks right now. So,
I hate that you started with that one, because the sidewalks, the walkability is
You're right.
is the most critical component.
well,
I think
I'm just being hypothetical.
I think he's using it as an example.
Yeah.
It's not a motion.
I only said that because that's going to be the most expensive one by far. But so anyway, it was just hypothetical. I wasn't making that call at all.
So can we, I don't know how you want to put this, but we need to be able to, if sidewalks are done, let's say, or trees are done, or some lighting is done, we got to consider the four corners of the plaza. We can't do halfway.
Well, we're not asking you to ignore it and just do two parts of it, but we're giving you a general area to work with, Able City. In other words, we're doing this L. I understand what you're saying. We're not disagreeing with you. We're just saying that if suddenly that square becomes the center of the project, we're moving in the wrong direction.
No, I got that. I understand, but I mean, we're dealing with a piece there that is, you can't consider half of it when you're designing it.
Just my
So
opinion.
there might be some money that has to go into that area.
Agreed.
I'm not saying a lot, but
Agreed.
so.
Well, yeah.
The other thing is that we also need to begin with that survey and inventory in order to come up with an opinion of probable cost for these, and a direction on what kind of improvements where and all of that stuff.
I'm not sure if you're asking or you're informing us if that's what you're
I
doing.
guess I'm informing you. We have to get in there. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I would say that the challenge is that the more you could give us detailed, that would give us better projections. But I think what we need right now is just we need rough estimates right now to work with, and we need to know what scale, what order of magnitude we're dealing with. At some point, you're right. If we were ever to contract this work out, at that point, obviously, we're going to have to do very detailed surveys of what we're asking for.
Oh, I'm not suggesting it's I think we need to
But yeah, it's a given. You're going to need to go down the street and say, okay, here's how many streets we need to add because we already have some here, and here's where sidewalk. There's going to, where we need right of way.
Right. It's not an actual engineered survey of the streets.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the motion. Any other?
Yeah. Is there any other discussion? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. I'm sorry that I've taken the meeting beyond 4 o'clock. I know it was scheduled from 2:30 to 4 o'clock. Yes, Kirby.
I just want to make one last comment to Arturo's point. That's the motion from the board. So those are the next steps. And so we really don't have any next steps other than that. So the only other motion I'd make is, because I feel it's important, I really would like to, I don't know if we need a motion for this, but I would like, if you're willing, Henry, at least me and you, but any other of the board that want to, we can try to reach out, have those conversations with those other entities separate from this, and see if we can make any headway to getting others to contribute to that increment. Other than that, these are the next steps to do this report.
Yeah, the motion and what it entails are the next steps for the record. I agree with Kirby. Kirby, you and I, a couple of us can get together, and not more than 4, but 3 of us, to discuss if we want to start approaching other players and talk to them about that. Okay.
I would just volunteer, or suggest that, if you're just lean on us in whatever way you can or want to bring exhibits and or data to those meetings.
You got a good relationship with school districts, right, Mario? You know those people well, those board members.
Well, I hope so. I think so. But I think the value that we can possibly add to the meetings is data on TERSs, the sort of the master plan view, and making any arguments or sort of enlighten anything that would enlighten the benefit to that organization.
Could you help us get on the agenda for the next LASD board meeting?
We can make contact.
But I don't know that we should be on the board meeting before we're approaching a couple of the organization itself. Don't you think, Kirby?
Well, for LASD and for the college, if we could just go to the board meeting and make a 5-minute presentation, and then catch them all there. Not more detail. Just say, hey, introduce ourselves. The beginning of a conversation, if you're willing to have it. Here's the benefits.
So, may I suggest that we have a meeting with Dr. Solis, and maybe he would like to invite a couple of board members to listen to our pitch, across the table, and we can prepare some data for that, and then go to the board meetings.
I think, well, first of all, we do need a presentation, so we need to work on some kind of a presentation to present there.
Mr. Chair, this goes directly to my point. We're starting to drift away from our primary issue of the projects, getting the projects moving, to now to, setting up meetings and stuff for other stuff. The priority should be the projects.
Yeah. Point taken.
The funding, if anything comes into play, it's going to be until 2022.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't want to be waiting until then.
Yeah, your point is good.
But the money,
not wrong.
It will come because they've agreed to participate in the TERS. It starts.
I understand, and I'm sorry to interrupt. I understand the point. I don't think at least I'm not going to argue against the importance of what you're saying, Able City. I think that's an important point. But I sense at this meeting a bit of frustration on a couple of board members' point about wanting to have seen this project, our part of the project, costing it out, focusing on it, moving forward. So let's focus on that first.
Understood.
And then we'll move to the next step. But let's do that part first. I don't want to ignore the comments that came from a couple of the board members and what they had, where they expected us to be at. I think I've done a good job of explaining why we're not at that point yet, but let's move towards that point. Okay.
Okay. Can we go to the last slide, just as a final, please? So none of these were meant to be like, the next steps right now for the following information and meeting that you all want, we understand, but everything that we've talked about here is still pertinent to these projects. So at some point, we'll get back to some of these.
Yes.
After the next meeting, we'll say, okay, the next step for this meeting will be X, Y, and Z.
Understood.
Okay.
Okay. There are, I'd like to move to another item, but there are no other items on the agenda. And I think just we've exhausted the discussion on this item. So I'd like to entertain a motion that we adjourn meeting.
I'll make that motion, Kirby.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Again, I appreciate everybody's time. It was almost a 2-hour meeting. We try to keep these to an hour, between an hour and a half. Able City, if you need to meet with any subgroup of the board, as long as there's not a quorum, feel free to call those individuals and ask to meet with them so that you can help move towards your next step.
Got it.
Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye.
Okay, Kirby.